best team that they can put on the field this year.
Welcome to 49ers Forecast.
You guys are going to hear it, the latest from the locker room, the latest from the podium, the latest scuttle from the players.
On your proud home of 49ers football. Touchdown! KNBR, the sports leader. Your faithful fix with your host Larry Krueger begins now.
And away we go. Welcome to 49er Forecast on a beautiful Saturday, the final Saturday of 2025. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and will soon have a Happy New Year with your families and your friends. I've probably eaten way too much. We're doing more family celebrating later today. It is a great football day. We've got 2 NFL games, a slew of college bowl games going on as we speak. And we have one more sleep before the biggest game of the year in the NFL, in my opinion. The Niners and the Bears, a showdown of the 2 hottest teams in the NFC at Levi's. The Niners need 2 more wins to clinch the number 1 seed and the first round bye in the NFC playoffs. The Bears need a win, or a Bears victory will be big for them as well. Chicago is on the verge of clinching a playoff berth. So if they get the win, they clinch the NFC North with a win. They don't even need a win. If Green Bay loses to Baltimore later today, and Green Bay starting Malik Willis against the Ravens, that game is at Lambeau. If Green Bay loses to Baltimore, Chicago clinches the NFC North before they even hit the field Sunday night against the 49ers. But we got a great hour. We're going to talk a lot of Niners and talk a lot of Bears. The great Tom Thayer is going to be with us, and I'm a big Tom Thayer guy. I've had him on the last couple of years as the Niners have played the Bears. He's the Bears color analyst. And, you know, he was a member of the 85 Bears. He was one of the guards, Bortz and Thayer. I can still hear Pat Summerall introducing these guys. Hilgenberg, Covert, Bortz, Thayer. I love Madden and Summerall. It was just unbelievable. Summerall's baritone introductions of these NFC playoff teams back in the 80s and 90s is just awesome. Just absolutely awesome. He had the incredible voice. And Tom Thayer is a great guy, man. He's born and raised in Joliet, Illinois. He went to Joliet Catholic. Where did he go after Joliet Catholic? Of course, he went to Notre Dame. And then where did he go after Notre Dame? Of course, Chicago Bears, who took him in the 83 draft, another great Jim Finks pick, most likely, 4th-round pick out of Notre Dame. And played his career with the Bears, finished up with the Dolphins, and has been the Bears color analyst for a number of years. And just a great guy. And I think guys are really gonna enjoy the conversation with Tom Thayer, because he just knows this Bears team like the back of his hand. You know, I could have a beat writer on here, and he could quote you all kinds of stats, and the stats are great. I'll throw out a bunch of stats myself. But when you get the color analyst, when you get like a Tim Ryan, you get like a Tom Thayer in this situation. I mean, they can give you the background on how how the Bears got to this decision, how, just kind of the whole backstory. And so many of these questions about football teams, there's always some backstory involved. Well, he was drafted, he was hurt, it was this, it was that. He lost his job, he regained it, he had some adversity, he came back. And so Tom Thayer's great at kind of painting that picture, and he's going to join us later on in the hour, and we'll break down a Niners Bears from Thayer's perspective, and I'm really looking forward to that. All right, let's get into a couple thoughts this week on the Niners, because John Lynch stopped by on KNBR. He stops by every Thursday with Murph and Marcus, and I think this week he stopped by on a Friday because Thursday was Christmas. And sometimes it's, there's not a lot of news, but sometimes there is a lot of news. And this week I thought there was a lot of news. The 3 names that Lynch hit on were Fred Warner, Robert Saleh, and George Kittle. And I thought all 3 of them were worthy of discussion. One, Fred Warner, he says, is It's a possibility that he can return for the postseason. I mean, that was the unthinkable when he went down in whatever it was, week 6 in Tampa. If you told me then that Fred was going to try to play this year, I would have said, no way. And I still don't think I would have him out there. I really don't. If it was up to me, I think I would say, Fred, I respect you. I love that you want to come back. Let's find a role for you to coach these guys up, but let's not. You're a young man with your career ahead of you. Let's not ruin 2026. Let's not ruin your future. Let's not, take a bad situation and make it worse. And I know you're going to, the Nationals are going to have to fight Warner to keep him off the field because that's how bad he wants it. And he's their leader. And I've asked guys in that room, what does it mean to you to have him up in the suite? What does it mean to you to have him on the sidelines, shaking your hands at the end of games? He's like, some of the guys are like, hey, man, it means everything. Curtis Robinson the other day told me, he's like, man, he's our leader. He's our leader. And to have him out there, supporting us, we feel that support, and it absolutely helps us. So I think all Niner fans would love to see him back as long as he's not risking anything. I mean, maybe the greatest comeback I think I've ever seen was Terrell Owens in the Super Bowl. It was like 6 weeks after he ruined his leg. He was out there doing it again. And he clearly was in a ton of pain, and yet he still produced. I mean, Terrell Owens, you can say whatever you want about Terrell Owens and wide receivers. Oh, they're divas and this and that. Terrell Owens played through a tremendous amount of pain in the Super Bowl because he knew he was Terrell Owens and needed to play. I've always respected T.O. for that. I mean, you say whatever you want, sit-ups in the driveway, that's my quarterback, and all that stuff. But still, it's like, you know what? The Sharpie and the popcorn and the whole deal. But you know what? T.O. was tough. At the core, he was just tough. Seriously tough. And so's Fred Warner. So he's going to try to get back. So I thought that was interesting note number one. Interesting note number two is that John was asked about Robert Saleh. And he's like, hey, Robert Saleh's got goals. He's got aspirations. He wants to be a head coach in the league again. And he's coaching well enough to get another opportunity for sure. But Lynch said, hey, we're going to do everything in our power to keep this guy. And there is no salary cap when it comes to paying assistant coaches. And there's an awful lot of money inside the game right now. You look at the continuity that the Chiefs have had with Dave Taub and Spags and Andy Reid. And it's like, they've been on top, and don't tell me it didn't have a whole lot to do with their coaching staff continuity, because I really believe it did. Look at New England, and their run with Brady. I mean, people talk about Brady, but guys like Dante Zarnecchia and Vrabel and Belichick and McDaniels. I mean, they were there for all of it or most of it. There was great coaching continuity there. When all offense, defense, special teams. So I really think this year the 49ers have the best coaching staff they've had in this regime. Brant Boyer is the best special teams coach. I think Saleh, coming off of his experience with the Jets, is even a better coordinator than he was the first time around. I think he's more versatile. I think he's got more answers. First time around, it was a lot of cover 3 and rush 4 and drop 7 and play cover 3. And it was there wasn't a lot of complexity. I'm not that that's all they did, but that's what they did a lot. And now, he's had games where he's blitzed 48% this year. He's had games where he hasn't blitzed at all in the same year. He's trying to do everything he possibly can to kind of, try to compensate for the lack of Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, especially Bosa up front. So the fact that Lynch was like, hey, we're going to do everything in our power to keep Robert Saleh, we can make it very attractive for him to stay. I'd love to hear that. Pay this guy. I mean, what's he normally going to make? 3-4 million? Pay him 8. Who cares? I mean, seriously, you've wasted $8 million. You've got $103 million of dead cap this year. You're second in the league in dead cap, and you're still very much alive for the Super Bowl. So, the revenue that exists within the game allows you to do whatever the hell you want to do. It allows you to tell Jim Tomsula and his entire coaching staff to beat it. And then a year later to tell Chip Kelly and his entire coaching staff to beat it. Those guys don't just disappear. Jet had to pay them to go away. So that's where we're at with the sport. That's why you're seeing so many coaches fired, by the way. the day after the season because there's so much money in the game right now that you don't like your coaching staff, fire them. Oh, but wait, there's $20 million of assistant coach contracts that we have to eat it. Do it, eat it. Who cares? You got hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue coming in that are shared. And as the gambling takes effect, there's even that pie is growing by leaps and bounds. You could argue the NFL is the most burgeoning industry in America. I mean, show me another industry that's gone from like $10 billion in total industry to $25 billion in like a decade. It's unbelievable. The popularity of the sport is enormous. The growth within it is absolutely enormous, and you have a ton of money. And what does that money allow you to do? It allows you to beat contenders even when you got $100 million of dead money. It allows you to pay coaching staffs to go away, and it allows you to pay Robert Saleh way, way, way more than maybe you should because you have that revenue. So Lynch made that point. And the other point he made was that George Kittle, it's going to be a game time decision. He's got a low ankle sprain. He didn't practice Wednesday. He did not practice Thursday. He did not practice Friday. He has not practiced this week, but they're not going to rule him out. You know, he means so much to them. They have Tonjes. They have Farrell. They're decent players. Tonjes is a hell of a receiver. We saw that catch last week that Kyle didn't challenge. That was an amazing catch. And Tonjes has great hands, and Farrell's a pretty decent blocker. Neither of these guys is Kittle. So Lynch said that it's going to be a game time decision. Didn't practice all week, but he still may go. This has got to be a huge game for Kittle. I think he grew up a Bears fan, and he knows what's on the line. So my guess is Kittle gives it a go, and then he's out there Sunday night. We'll see. One guy that's not going to be out there is Rome Odunze, the star receiver for the Bears. Now, don't think that means, the Niners are going to win this game because it really doesn't. DJ Moore last week had 97 yards receiving, and he's had 3 touchdowns in the past 3 games. He's got 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. DJ Moore is a stud in his own right, and they've got other receivers besides that, including 2 really good tight ends. So the Bears have a lot of weapons, but they will not have their number 1 receiver, Rome Odunze. Also this week, Drew Dahlman, Luther Burden, Kevin Byard, and Nahshon Wright. All key guys. Those are 4 of their most key guys. Maybe their most key players on offense and defense are all limited this week on the injured list. So Dahlman, Burden on offense, Byard, who I think has like 6 picks by himself, and Nahshon Wright's got 5. How about that? Nahshon Wright, who played for the late John Beam at Laney College and was obviously very affected by the tragic assassination of Beam earlier this year, where it brought him to tears. And Nahshon's had an unbelievable year for Chicago, and Byard as well. Those guys have combined for 11 interceptions. The Niners have 6 as a team. Those 2 guys have 11. The Bears as a team have 21 picks. It's absolutely astonishing, that number. And that's going to be one of the keys in this game. Take care of the ball. How big is this game? Well, the 49ers currently have a 32% chance of claiming that number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. 32% chance. If they win Sunday night, 32% chance goes to 53% chance. So they're not home, but they're well on their way if they get the win. If the Bears win Sunday night, the Niners have a 1% chance of getting the number 1 seed. So you want the number 1 seed? You want the first round bye? You want the road to the playoffs to roll through Levi's? You better win. You better win. It's really as simple as that. Now, here comes Chicago. Chicago, it's funny, in my family, I'm a lifelong Niner fan. I grew up here in San Francisco. My dad was a Niner fan. He took me to Niner games when I was 4 or 5. I'm a Niner fan. But my mom was from Chicago. And so she very, very much was a Bear fan. And all of her family very much were Bears fans. And all my relatives in Chicago are obviously, tried and true Bears fans. Actually, my uncle was a Chicago Cardinals fan, but he was dating himself and he's no longer with us. Yes, that's right. The Cardinals used to play in Chicago. But this Bears team that, Tom Thayer was on maybe the most magical Bears team of all time, the 85 Bears. I mean, they made the Super Bowl shuffle in like week 8. I mean, that's how good they were. They were absolutely amazing. Think of the greatest defensive teams you've ever seen. Seahawks with the Legion of Boom, Lynch's team with Tampa Bay in 2002, 2000 Ravens, 75 Steelers, whatever, 86 Giants, 87 Skins, 84 Niners. I mean, whatever you think is the greatest defense you've ever seen, they all line up behind the 85 Bears. The 85 Bears were a magical team with Jim Finks built an incredible unit, and then Buddy Ryan had a scheme that was so unlike anybody else's scheme, and they called it the 46 defense. And it was amazing. Offenses went backwards against the 85 Bears. Dan Hampton, Steve McMichael, The Fridge, Richard Dent, Wilbur Marshall, Mike Singletary, Mama's Boy Otis Wilson, Gary Fensick. I mean, I'm not even a Bears fan. I can name all these guys.
Don't forget Dave
Sean
Duerson.
Gale, the late, great Dave Duerson. So many awesome players. I mean, think about that. The 85 Bears were so awesome that Al Harris and Todd Bell, who were, I think, Pro Bowl caliber defensive players, both held out and didn't play, and they didn't miss them. That's how good they were. They were just absolutely awesome. They beat the Niners at Candlestick that year with Walter Payton. I think it was like 26-10. And that was a great Niner team. That was the defending Super Bowl champion 49ers in 1985, taken down at home by Walter Payton and the Bears. I mean, that's how good they were. That was a magic carpet ride. But this year's Bears are on almost an equal magic carpet ride. Maybe there's even more magic. How about this? The Chicago Bears this year have won 6 games that they have trailed in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. 6 games. That's crazy. They're the first team in NFL history to ever do that. So there is a magic carpet ride going on with Chicago. There's just no question about it. One of the things I mentioned to Shanahan yesterday, and he was like, "Hey, I didn't know that." And I was like, "Whoa." I got some information into Shanahan that he didn't know about. I was like, "Wow." I was very impressed with myself. Chicago has not allowed an opening drive score in 7 straight games. You get the ball first, they stop you. It's the way it's gone. 7 straight games. They've also given up an NFL low 10 points on opening drives all season long. So this is kind of one of their things. They don't give up points early. Now here comes Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy has been really good on first drives. In fact, the Brock Purdy this year on 7 opening drives has produced 5 touchdowns and 1 field goal. So, man, something's got to give. I mean, right away. Are the Bears going to stop the Niners on that first possession? Or are the Niners going to get that score on the first possession and say, no, this is a different deal this time around? So, for the 49ers, they've clinched a playoff berth already, and they're in the playoffs for their 4th time in the last 5 years. Niners are 4-0 in prime time. This game's in prime time. Maybe they'll go 5-0 in prime time this year. Maybe they'll go 6-0. Maybe Seattle will be flexed to prime time, and it will also be a prime time game. But the Niners have been really good in prime time. Why are they so good in prime time? Because they got prime time players. CMC, Trent Williams, George Kittle. And has anybody been more prime time than Jawan Jennings? Jawan Jennings, 7 touchdowns since week 9. And you sit there and you go, man, why have the Niners been so good this year or been so good under Purdy? He's winning on 3rd down. The Niners rank 2nd in the NFL. They have a 50% 3rd down completion or conversion rate. They're staying on the field. They convert on 3rd down. Brock Purdy has just been absolutely amazing. By the way, Purdy gave his O-line Rolexes for Christmas this year. So last year Toyotas, this year Rolexes. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it's been about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's been really, really good. He leads the NFL with a 130 passer rating on 3rd downs. 130. So the big key in this game is going to be turnovers for sure. The Niners, when they've when they've won the turnover battle this year, they win. When they lose the turnover battle, they lose. They've had 8 turnovers in their 4 losses. Chicago's plus 21 in turnover margin. It's the second best of any team through 15 games in the past 13 seasons. Only the 2019 Patriots at this point had a better turnover margin at plus 22 than what the Bears have this year. So the biggest thing, and we'll take a break here, but the Bears are going to try to run it down the Niners' throat, period. Swift, Monangi, get ready for it. They got a big-time interior offensive line. They're going to try to run it down the Niners' throat. Chicago's run for at least 138 yards in 7 of 8 games this year. They average 150-plus yards rushing per game. Now, the Niners' run defense, which on paper looks bad, but the Niners' run defense since week 11, third best in the NFL, allowing 87.4 yards per game. They just shut down Jonathan Taylor last week, held him to 46 yards. This is the game right here. Can the Bears run it at the Niners and beat the Niners in their backyard, or can the Niners shut down Swift and Monangi and basically say, hey, Caleb, can you beat us? And I don't think Caleb can. So there you go. There's a couple of quick thoughts on this matchup. We're going to talk more about the matchup next. Tom Thayer joins us. It's 49er Forecast on a beautiful Saturday, the final Saturday of 2025. Let's make it a good one. Tom Thayer joins us next on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. faithful. Larry Kruger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues on KNBR, the sports leader. Sports leader.
Welcome back to 49er Forecast, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the KNBR airwaves former Bears offensive lineman, now color analyst for the Bears, Tom Thayer is with us. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you, and congratulations. Earlier this year, we had Ron Rivera on earlier this week, and the 85 Bears were honored, the 40th anniversary of that team. What a fun team that was. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before or since.
Yeah, it was a really cool team, and it was a great getting together with everybody. Too bad we had a couple of missing people there, most recently, and a guy like Steve McMichael, but Walter Payton and his role in that team as well. But, I think the older we get, the closer we get. And another unique thing about that team is there's kind of something for everybody. And whether you're, the good-looking guy like a Gary Fensick, or you're a big guy like William Perry, or a crazy guy like Jim McMahon, there's just something for everybody in that group of guys. And I think a lot of people have, somebody to gravitate towards.
It was a magic carpet ride in 85, and it has that vibe again this year, does it not?
It does. It really does. That was a unique group of guys in 85, and we had the perfect coach for that type of player and that group of guys in Mike Ditka. And I think when you modernize football to where it's gone, and free agency and the amount of money guys are making, and the creativity of the offenses, and some of these young coaches like Shanahan and now like Ben Johnson, I think Ben Johnson's the perfect modern day for the job. So the Bears made the right decision to go after Ben Johnson, bring him aboard, and he's done a lot to change the culture in a short amount of time.
It's funny. You talk 85 Bears, and people think about Buddy Ryan, and they think about Peyton, and they think about Ditka, and maybe McMahon, the incredible defense, Dent, and all those great players on defense. The guy that never is ever thought of as the architect of the whole thing, and that was Jim Finks. And Jim Finks was a great personnel guy who had a number of good drafts leading into that 85 season, which created the 85 Bears. I don't want to say that Ryan Poles is Jim Finks. I would never say that. But Poles has done a pretty good job of, kind of restocking this roster over the last few years, and it's all starting to kind of come to fruition and blossom here in 2025. Talk to us about what you thought of Poles initially and his plan and how it's going.
Well, definitely when he got hired, they often talked about how he had to tear this entire house down and start from the ground floor, the studs of the building on up. And he's been able to do that. When he brought in TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, that came in to kind of solidify the second level of the defense. Then they brought in guys like Kevin Byard. Then he went out and got Montez Sweat. This year he went out and got Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, and Joe Tunay. So he's been able to bring in the guys, the free agency, that have some pelts on the wall and some success. And then, they had to make the pick. They didn't have to make the pick, but they made the pick of Caleb. And when you look at the Caleb Williams draft and how many great quarterbacks there were coming out, you really had to identify which one meant the most to your team, to your future, into your system. And they brought Caleb in here. And, first part of his career, he suffered through a little bit of the transition of multiple offensive coordinators. And then they went out and got Ben Johnson. And I think Caleb is really only scratching the surface of ultimately where he's going to be in a couple years. But Ben is the right guy for the job, and Ryan Poles has brought in a lot of guys that were bona fide, legitimate NFL credentialed veterans. But he's also brought in some other guys like Nashawn Wright that have been able to answer the bell at the cornerback position after there was injuries to Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson missed some time. So he's had these other guys that you really didn't know how they were going to fill their role. But with Dennis Allen, the new defensive coordinator, and the guys that Ryan Poles brought in, they've been able to live through the injuries that they've suffered throughout the year.
Let's talk about Caleb for a second because he's got some great numbers and some numbers that make you scratch your head. I mean, 23 touchdowns, 6 picks. He really takes care of the football. And I don't know if that means he doesn't take chances, but he's got a very low number of interceptions. But then the completion percentage is quite low, 57.8%. You've watched every snap of every game. Explain those numbers to us. What's it looking like?
The difficulty of mastering an NFL system in the modern day terminology on how long that takes a quarterback. And that's why I said, I don't think we're going to see the best out of Caleb maybe for another year or sometime late into next year, because the difficulty of mastering the Ben Johnson terminology and knowing how it exactly fits to the other 10 guys in the huddle on one or two plays every time he's in the huddle, just the difficulty of that process, I think it affects your accuracy, your decision-making process, making sure that you know exactly where the ball's going to go before it's ever snapped to you. And that time will come. But Caleb has showed that he has unbelievable escapability. He's not making the silly, disastrous plays that result in an interception in multiple possessions for the opponent. I do believe that they're willing to live at this incremental improvement that he's been shown throughout the season. Ben put it out there from the podium that ultimately he would like to see Caleb reach that 70% completion percentage. That's a big number. I think if you came into the NFL nowadays and you were at 67% and you understood the system, I do think that would, help the overall performance of the offense. But it is about Caleb being blessed with the same coaches, the same system, the same terminology for multiple years. And I do think that's when you're really going to see the best what Caleb can ultimately be.
It's interesting. All these other people get headlines, but, if you said what was the underrated aspect of the 85 Bears, I think most people would tell you it was that offensive line, with Bortz and yourself and Jimbo Covert. And, I mean, Covert was a blue chip player, but, that was a kind of a tough, old school type offensive line. What do you think of this offensive line? They brought in Dahlman. I know he's a little dinged up for this game, but he's had a big impact. Jonah Jackson, Tooney, they invested a number one pick in Darnell Wright. What do you think of the Bears' offensive line? Because it seems like, they got a strong rushing attack. They're one of the best running attacks in football, and I think a lot of that's due to the interior of their O-line.
Yeah, to talk about this year's offensive line specifically, not going back a year or two. Every great offensive line has to have a great offensive line coach. And when you look at Dick Stanfeld and our offensive line, he was a Hall of Fame player and he was a Hall of Fame coach. The Bears went out and hired Dan Rochar, and he didn't have any friendship or any background with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson had just heard that he's a really good coach, a fundamental. He's a no-nonsense guy. And so he would go out there and publicly say to the press, look, if this guy has to start playing up to his capabilities. These guys got to start having the continuity that they need on the inside to start performing better. And so I think the first challenge went out to Darnell Wright, who's a high draft pick and really wasn't living up to the draft where he was chosen to his performance. But he has been an unbelievably different player since about the fourth game of the year this year. He's more physical. He's better at the point of attack. He shows his athleticism and his versatility within this offense. And then that whole growth between Drew Dahlman, the center, Joe Tooney, the left guard, and Jonah Jackson, the right guard, they all started to form that relationship with each other so they could all work. The middle three could all work as one unit, supporting the offensive tackles. And then they went through 3 offensive tackles in the course of the season, and they finally decided that Ryan Poles went out and drafted rookie Ozzie Trapillo. He's got a majority of time spent at right tackle, but he has played at left tackle, and that's where he's playing now. In each game, he gets a little bit better. Each game, he gets a better working relationship with Joe Tooney, who made another Pro Bowl this year, and he's got a couple of good tight ends next to him in Cole Kmet in first-round draft choice, Colston Loveland, and Durham Smythe. So they've been able to develop the continuity of all 5 guys to be able to support the running game. DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai the two running backs have thrived off of it. But, like Ben said again at his initial press conference, I need a running back that's willing to get dirty yards. And each of these guys have been challenged with that, and they've been able to complement the offensive line because of it. And I think that's the key ingredient to this offense is they finally got 5 guys that they've, other than the offensive left tackle that's changed a couple times, they finally got a group of guys that are there game in and game out for the whole game, and they just keep getting better and better. The more they get to understand the Ben Johnson system, the better they play.
Tom Thayer with us on The Sports Leader. I really loved Monangai at Rutgers. I mean, great contact balance. He's a hard guy to find. Sometimes you can lose him because he's kind of a smaller guy. What is their rhyme and reason on how they use Swift? I've watched a number in Monangai. I've watched a number of Bears games, but it's not like one guy's that I can tell. It doesn't look like one guy's the receiver, the other guy's the runner. Seems like these guys can both do a little bit of everything. How does Ben Johnson utilize the duo?
Ben Johnson fortunately knew a little bit about DeAndre Swift since their time together in Detroit. So he kind of knew the potential that he could tap into. And he challenged DeAndre Swift early when I talked about the dirty yards. He spoke specifically about DeAndre Swift and how he was going to, expand his role within this offense. And he's been able to do it. There are maybe 10 or 12 times throughout the course of the season, whether it's 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and DeAndre Swift is challenged at the line of scrimmage or maybe in the backfield, and he's able to run through those tackles. And he's turning initial contact into a 3 to 5 yard run. And so that is really rewarding to see what he's doing with this Ben Johnson system. And then all of us kind of were fed a little bit of Monangai. He was in the game but didn't get any carries. He was in the game and he was in blitz pickup. He was in the game, then he got a carry and a catch. And then all of a sudden, the Cincinnati game, when DeAndre Swift missed the game, he carried a bulk of the load. And he was able to have 25, almost 30 touches and convert it into, almost 200 yards. And then you finally got a little bit of going, wow, this guy is really an asset in the backfield. Now, if you put him back there with another back, DeAndre Swift, and you lessen that load, maybe you probably get more production out of him as the season winds on. And that's exactly what's proved the Bears right in putting Monangai in that spot.
Yeah, Monangai, I mean, they're both good. But Monangai is just really, really tough to find. How about receiver? Rome Odunze, I know, has got the foot. He's not going to go. That's been announced already. But Luther Burden's been banged up. And, it's funny, the Bears are deep here. DJ Moore, you almost forget how good DJ Moore is. He had 97 yards receiving last week. He's got 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. He's got 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. They don't have Odunze, but the cupboard's not bare, is it?
No, they have Devin Duvernay, they have Olamide Zaccheaus, and they have an undrafted free agent who caught a big touchdown last week. Had his first catch and his first touchdown in an NFL game in Ja'Day Walker. And one thing about Walker, he hasn't had the opportunity to get on the field because they've had so many receivers. But he's a guy that had maybe one of the best training camps of all the receivers because he was getting such extended playing time in the games. And you knew when his opportunity arose, he wasn't going to let you down. And I think he's got a heavy upside. And, the reason I don't think that DJ Moore has had these overwhelmingly over-the-top numbers is because Ben Johnson only uses guys accordingly to the next game plan. It's not a number 1 receiver than everybody else, a number 1 tight end and everybody else. No, it's how do the play designs fit the type of guy that's playing in that specific position? And so all of these guys have gotten the opportunity to have big games. But last week in that Green Bay game, DJ Moore got cheap shotted early in the game. And a lot of guys would have went out, but he bounced back and had a first down catch 2 plays later. And then he had a couple of big catches leading up to the biggest catch of all in the overtime. So, listen, DJ Moore, that guy is legit. He is an all-time tough guy. He is a guy that if I was a GM or I was a head coach, I would want him on my team. He is not a prima donna. He's not a He is a hard-working, fully committed guy that he's important to the culture of an entire locker room, just not the receiver position.
You know, let's talk about the defense. Dennis Allen, obviously former head coach. He's a really good defensive coordinator. But they're 27th against the run. I think if there's any weakness, it's just that they're not the running. They're not the run defense. You think of Chicago, you think of defense always, but it's not a stellar run defense. What do you think? I mean, 21 interceptions, 11 between Byard and
Nashon.
Yeah, Nashon, right.
Yeah.
Who's a Bay Area kid who actually played for John Beam, the late John Beam at Laney College. What a tragedy that was. I saw how emotional he got when Beam was slain. But talk to us a little bit about this defense that Dennis Allen has, because, man, you catch them in the right moment and they can look really, really good. What would you view as the strength of this defense?
I think that it's kind of the scheming of Dennis Allen, because, when we went to training camp, we had 21 defensive backs. And we are saying, oh, my God, this is the deepest group that maybe we've ever had here. And we're seeing guys like Nick McLeod and Nashon Wright and some of the other new guys. But then we had the holdovers and Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, Kevin Byard, Jalen Johnson, Tariq Stevenson. And then they had a rash of injuries. And so then Dennis Allen and Al Harris, they kind of had to reinvent the position, and everybody lived up to their promise. And they were playing at a level, but they weren't being complemented by a pass rush that was so overwhelming that it was making things easy for the defensive backfield. So everybody had to kind of fall in line together. And then they had injuries from TJ Edwards to Tremaine Edmonds. And then the guys that came into a backup role at the linebacker position, they played really well, surprisingly so. But finally, TJ and Tremaine Edmonds are back in their spot, so hopefully they'll be able to help it. But the real key ingredient is, unfortunately, they had a little bit of a setback earlier with free agent Grady Jarrett with a knee injury, who took him out of action, and I took a little bit of his explosiveness away. And he's a guy that I really thought throughout his career he had a lot of innate ability to have an explosive approach to inside defensive line play, but he hurt his knee and it slowed that down a little bit. So that's the key ingredient, is the Bears' interior defensive line. They haven't really been the studs that you need to have at that position in order to run a Dennis Allen style defense. And they have Montez Sweat and they have Austin Booker, and they made the trade for Joe T. I call him Teron Sacinco, or I'm not really even sure how you say his last name.
Tryon Shawinka.
Yes. Sorry for that. But I call him Joe T. But, so they really haven't had the production out of the defensive line that they need to have. And that's been the thing that's hurt their defense the most, is they're giving up interior rushing yards. They're not having sacks at the most important time, but they're living on turnovers. And I don't know if you really can make a living out of turnovers. So it's almost like the part of the team that has to play the best down the stretch is going to have to be the front seven, front eight.
What do you think of C.J. Gardner-Johnson? And I saw he kind of wrenched his left knee late in that game. I didn't see him on the injury report. He is a tough guy, and it seems like anywhere he goes, his team wins. They won in Detroit, he won in Philly, went back to Philly, won again in Philly. It's like now he's in Chicago. They're winning there. I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a tremendous football player.
Well, you know what? He's really saved the Bears in terms of nickel defense and dime defense, because Kyler Gordon has missed almost the whole season. And they signed him to a contract extension at the beginning of the year. And, Kyler's, man, he's a creative guy. He's really deployable. He can disguise himself when he's blitzing, or he's got good coverage skills. And then once Kyler Gordon went down, they had to go and find somebody. And luckily, Dennis Allen had a relationship with Gardner-Johnson, and he came in his first game, he gets 2 sacks. He fits in immediately. He fits inside of a locker room that there's a lot of personality traits that he has shown to Bears, especially with guys fighting him on the field, that he's only lived up to a leadership role rather than a personality concern. And I mean, he he has really saved the back end of the Bears defense when he came aboard and he was able to play within 5 days of re-signing. And I think he really had an appreciation for the Bears and coming here, because he said he was on the street for a month. You're missing game checks, and all of a sudden you realize, this is getting serious now. The Bears brought him aboard, and now he's on a division-winning team, and he's playing a major role on this defense.
Yeah, no, it's incredible to watch. Two last things. Ben Johnson, that whole good, better, best, taking his shirt off, that got national headlines. I'm sure it's been played all over every sports radio station throughout Chicago for the last month. What do you make of Ben Johnson? He kind of reminds me a little bit, different era, different guy, different side of the ball, but he reminds me a little bit of Jimmy Johnson, just from the standpoint of just he gives his team swagger. He's tough. He seems like the kind of guy that would cut you if you were sleeping in a meeting. Give us you played for Ditka and you played for Buddy and those guys. I mean, you've seen some great coaches. You've seen some bad coaches. What strikes you about him?
I've been fortunate. I played for 5 Hall of Fame coaches, and when I learned more, when I met Ben Johnson, I learned more about him, and I watched the way he goes about every single day business. He's like Shanahan. Again, he's one of the most creative offensive play designers and play callers that I've ever been around. And I made this statement publicly, and I don't deny it, and I don't hide from it. Mike Ditka was the best coach for the '85 Bears. His personality is what you needed with that group of guys. When you think of McMichael and Hampton, and you think of Walter Payton, you think of McMahon, and these guys were right out of the central casting in any football movie you wanted to make. But right. Ditka also, he had that ability to control these guys because he had the background. And I think in the modern day football, Ben Johnson is the best coach the Bears have had since Mike Ditka. And when I look at his demeanor, like you mentioned, I think Jimmy Johnson, that's a great analogy. And it's one I really didn't think of, but I just appreciate his everyday approach, because it is, if you were sleeping in meetings, he would cut you. If you're making mental mistakes, he's not going to play you. And I really, love everything that I've learned and gotten to know about him, because the thing about him is I've asked him, because Jeff Joniak and I, we're the first guys that get to interview him right after games. And I've asked him questions before that he hasn't been happy with, and he doesn't hide telling me. And
that's awesome.
So I know. That's what I'm saying. I love it. I feel like I'm getting yelled at by, my last year I played for Don Shula. And sometimes you did things in front of him that he didn't appreciate. And so I just really have a lot of respect for Ben Johnson, and 39 years old, and his work ethic. And this, he didn't bring in a bunch of guys that he owed favors to when he put his staff together. He brought the best staff that he could bring in here. And I do think that's paying dividends that sometimes they don't get mentioned enough. But I think the staff he brought in is as good as there is for a first-time head coach in the league.
Man, Tom, I really appreciate you stopping by. During the holiday season, I kind of feel like the team on the road, the road team may have a little bit of an edge, just because the home team's got to deal with, the relatives and the in-laws and the kids. No football player is going to tell his 4-year-old, sorry, I need to sleep. I've got, you know what I mean? So the family always is going to come first. And I always feel like the teams on the road this time of year kind of benefit. The Bears are that team this week. But your thoughts on that, and then also, Brock Purdy gave his O-linemen Rolexes. Last year, he gave them Toyota trucks. I got to know, what's the greatest gift you ever got as an offensive lineman, paving the way for Sweetness, blocking for McMahon? It was a different era. Maybe guys didn't have quite as many dollars in the bank, but can you remember the best gift that an O-line was given while you were there?
Well, you know what? When Walter broke the rushing record, he gave all the offensive linemen these beautifully handmade, engraved shotguns, because Walter was a big hunter as well. And you're definitely in a different tax bracket back then than they are nowadays. Sure. So I got a beautiful watch from Jim McMahon during his time with the Bears. I tell you one funny story is, so when I was leaving the Bears, Jim Harbaugh was gifting all the offensive linemen the two-tone Rolex watches. And so I was out of the building when he was handing them out. And lo and behold, who took my position was Frank Komet, Cole's dad.
He's got your
Jim
watch?
Harbaugh, yes. And I see Frank all the time, and he rubs it in my face every time I see him. He's always – he goes, hey, Tom, you want to see your watch? Here it is. And I think the story is better than the actual gift. But, yeah, I missed out on my Rolex by a matter of hours. But he had to stay in Chicago. I got to go and play for the Miami Dolphins. So that was a reward enough.
Yeah, just when you're surfing those waves in Maui, just think about that watch. You were the guy that won the Super Bowl. Who was he? Hey, awesome to talk to you, Tom. We really appreciate your time, and I think this is the game of the year. I really do. I think the Bears have a ton of momentum. I know it's weird because Warner's out, Bosa's out, but the Niners have a ton of momentum, and Brock Purdy's playing. He was supposed to have turf toe, and was supposed to be going downhill, and it just doesn't seem like that's the story. So we shall see Sunday night, but the nation will be watching, and it's going to be a doozy.
It's going to be awesome. I really look forward to going out there, and I appreciate the position that Ben Johnson has put the Bears in. And the team always they have that mantra of we only need to go 1-0 this week. They're not thinking backwards and they're not thinking ahead. So I think the two best teams are going to be on the field Sunday night.
Tom, safe travels. We appreciate you. Happy holidays to you and all the Thayers, and thanks for jumping on KNBR.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Tom Thayer, more straight ahead. It's 49er forecast as we look ahead to Sunday night football, the Bears and the Niners. And you'll, of course, hear it on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. faithful 49ers forecast with Larry Krueger now continues on your proud home of 49ers football. KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, we're coming down the stretch. It's 49er forecast. Thanks to Raph for producing. JD's getting it warmed up for Just Dubs. He will take your phone calls and talk Warrior basketball. Coming up here in a matter of seconds. Thanks to Tom Thayer. Hope you guys enjoyed Tom Thayer, the voice of the Bears, the color analyst for the Bears. Couple last thoughts before we get out of here. One, Greg Papa, if you're listening, it's going to be awesome to see you at the game tomorrow, brother. Been waiting on this all year. Niner fans been praying hard, and we're getting Greg and Tim reunited in the booth for Niners Bears and Niners Seahawks, and I'm fired up about that. So I'm going to get there a little early, make sure I can stop by and dap up my man who's doing his thing, and he's the best there is. So there you go, Greg. Fired up to have you back in the booth. Couple quick thoughts on the matchup. Caleb Williams is definitely an improved quarterback. He's really dangerous when he gets out of the pocket. The Niners pass rush has struggled a lot this year. Keeping him hemmed in the pocket and forcing him to win inside of the structure of the play, I think is going to be the key of the game. The Bears don't throw it short often. They're 31st in the NFL in the quick throws, but they lead the NFL in deep throw rate. They go deep 15.1% of the time. The Niner defense has got to stay disciplined. So the Niners have a 22.8% pressure rate. That's 31st in the NFL. That ain't good. The Bears rank 7th in the NFL in scramble EPA. So, Caleb likes to extend plays and get out of the pocket. They got to keep him hemmed in the pocket. Bears are also got to limit their rushing attack because a lot of what Caleb does, he's a very young quarterback, but a lot of what he does is predicated on them running the heck out of it and him having play action at his disposal. Bears are top 10 in EPA per rush, and it unlocks their whole play action game. They're second in the NFL in play action play rate at 33.7%. He's under center 47% of the time, almost 48%. That's fourth highest in the league. Niners defense has done well against play action. They're 8th best EPA against play action. So, and Robert Saleh's defense has been top 10 defending the run with an EPA of 0.06. So, got to take away the run game. You cannot have Monangi and Swift running up and down the field on the Niners. So, stop the run game, make Caleb make plays from the pocket, play good pass defense down the field, win in the red zone, win on third down, win by dominating the time of possession, and win the game. So that's going to do it for us. JD is next. Have a great rest of your day. And big Sunday tomorrow. We'll have pregame. We'll have postgame. I'll be joining Copeland and Tim Webb and, of course, Tracy Sandler, Todd Husak, and a cast of thousands tomorrow. So enjoy JD talking Warriors. He's next on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the sports leader.